there's some important concepts within here. So a list is, you're familiar with all the touch devices kind of have lists, and put your data in a list, and you scroll up and down and select things and delete things and make music play, whatever. So we have this JSON data, and when we load it, you can see we create a list, and I can scroll this list like so. It's not quite as smooth as I would think normally, but normally it scrolls real smooth and everything. Maybe my Chrome is doing something weird. And so there's not a lot really in a list. When you look at the amount of code that's really going on, can you imagine building one of these yourself and having to track where the top and the bottom is? So basically this is a list example. And there's a lot more code than what we just showed, and frankly I would have done some object stuff here just to make it easier to read. But it's not. So the first thing we're going to talk about is this web service call. So this is an XHR call. If you're familiar with doing AJAX stuff or XML HTTP requests, that's what that does. It's one line of code, and it'll go to any URL or local file system and get that data. So you can actually, using this exact line of code, you could store or cache data in your application directory if you want, and it'll pull it up. Just as if I could put this on the touchpad right now, and this example would work, and at the data in the root of the application folder on the touchpad itself, in the data subdirectory, it would go and find the JSON and load it. We obviously have some callbacks for that: query response and query fail, and we have a page header, and we have some other stuff in here. Button. We already talked about buttons in quite a lot of detail. Not that there's a lot of detail to them, except that in this one I've added, or there's added, I think, a caption for load data. So that's how you put a name to a button. There's this HFlexbox stuff. We'll get into alignment of things in the next section here. And a virtual list. So this virtual list is kind of important for you guys that are writing lists. So within here is a model, and that's what the model is, as an item. So a model would be one item, and you could have thousands of them. And when you're inserting rows, this is what's used as your model. So it's right there. You don't have to go get it from another file and load it and then do some stuff with it, manipulate it, do DOM stuff. It's really easy. So when this web service fires, which happens on the create load data function here, that happens when you tap the button actually, there's a web service.call. Pretty simple. It calls web service, runs it, this guy here, fires it, and in our case it will be successful, and we will get a query response. Query response down here. So in response is basically the body of whatever we receive. So in our case, it's JSON, so we can directly put that into an array, which is this .data. The developer who did this sample decided that they wanted to sort this data. That's what this is. We're not going to get into sorting. It's a standard sort JavaScript function. And then at the bottom here, they call this list refresh. And that's going to cause this list to actually start to run. This list does nothing until you call that function. Once you call that function, it fires this function here, basically on setup row, which means, hey, I'm now alive. I want to start setting up rows. And so list up row fires, and somewhere down here is list up row. So what gets passed in is an index. So what it does is it says, okay, I'm ready for the first one, and it passes in 0, the number 0. And then you can then take the data. Remember, we put all the XHR data into this data, basically this data array. And index just indexes it, and we now have a record. So record.name, color, and subject are then set for those items that we were showing in the model. And those then are put into, these are kind of temporary models, and then those are actually put into a temporary structure in memory that holds this list. And once it reads in what it thinks it needs, it will then push that to WebKit and render it, instead of doing one at a time. If you do one at a time, it slows down the device significantly. Any browser, I don't care if you're on your desktop, if you're loading thousands of items in a list, it's going to slow down things. So what we did is we actually created a paging system that can figure out how many will fit in the space that is allotted, and maybe go get a couple more so that if the user starts to scroll, they don't see it, pausing, or at least hopefully not. If it's a huge record set, that could always happen, but typically no. And so we've done all the work for you. So literally, this function here is called for each row. So 0, 1, 2, 3, that's what's going to come into index. And so to show you this, I've added a console log here that says getting in index. So you can see what that looks like. And so when I load data, and I kind of go shift I, you'll see that it's, we'll just refresh again. You'll see that it actually only got 3 things. That's because there's only really room for 2 here, and the third is barely peaking, so it went and got that record as well. But as I'm moving this, you'll see that it's starting to go and get more. And if I scroll back down, that it remembers the rest, what was there before. So it's only as you're scrolling down that it's going and getting more from that array. You can tie in some fancy logic if you want, where you could go and make a web call again, like, hey, give me the first 50 from my website. And then if they scroll past 38 or something, you'll go and make another web call and go and load that array, further. So automatically, with literally just a few lines of code, we're doing all this stuff. It's all managed for you, and it works quite well, actually. So.